Okay, well, good evening, everybody. I think we'll start. We are missing some people, but hopefully they'll come when they come. But I really do believe in starting on time, and then we can finish on time. So welcome. This is Raising Your Spirited Child, and hopefully understanding a little bit about temperament. So my name is Judy Arnall, and I have taught parenting in the Calgary area for 17 years, and I have written a few books and a DVD, and I have 5 lovely children, which in some ways I'm an idealist because I go to conferences and I hear a lot of information and read about research, and then I preach about it in my classes, but I'm also a realist in that I have 5 kids, and sometimes it doesn't always work. So I do try and practice what I preach, but sometimes, like all parents, we're not perfect, and that's okay. So I have 4 boys and a princess in the middle. So my boys range in age from 10 to 21. So they're 10, 14, 20, and 21. And then my princess is 18, and her name is Heidi. So she's, as you can tell from this picture, you probably can tell which one's my spirited child. Yeah? Anybody? Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you, yep.
Okay.
I'm going to guess the actor in the middle.
Yes. Yes, the drama king in the middle. Actually, I actually have 3 spirited children. So if you look at my cursor, he's number 1, Chris, and I didn't know about spirited children back when I had him. I just knew. I went to my mommy and babies class, and all the moms are sitting around a circle, and they're holding their babies and sitting quietly, and there's my Chris, and he's screaming his head off every class. So I couldn't put him down in the car seat. I couldn't put him down. He had to be held or he'd just cry. And to me, that was pretty normal parenting. And then I didn't realize until I had my second one, this is Marlon here, who's a year younger than Chris, and he was very easygoing. I could put him down anywhere. He wouldn't complain. When he did complain, he whimpered a bit, but it's amazing even to this day. And then I had my daughter, who was much more spirited than my first, and I couldn't put her down for a whole 2 years. I carried her quite a lot. And then I had my slow to warm up child, which I'll explain all these terms. And then I had my 5th and last, Scotty, who was totally off the charts for spirited, and that's why he's my last. So, yeah, so that's my little introduction. And, I think parenting is one of the hardest jobs on earth, and I think we should all have a tip jar on our kitchen table and get those tips, just like they do in coffee shops, because we sure deserve it. So what I'm going to do is a little housekeeping things. Because this is a meeting and not a webinar, and I prefer meetings when we have small numbers, because then everybody can jump in and ask questions, and everybody can hear everybody's questions. So you can ask questions to other people too. So just so I know everybody can hear me, can you just tell me your first name? Anybody?
I'm Holly.
Okay, hi Holly.
Hi. Hey guys.
Hi, Holly. I'm Caroline.
Hi Caroline.
I'm Heidi.
Hi Heidi.
Cora.
Hi, Heidi. Hi, Holly.
I'm Cora.
Hi Cora.
Hi, Cora.
Do we have Jackie or Claire here?
I don't think so.
Not yet, no. Okay. Alrighty, so everybody, I can hear everybody and everyone can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes. Judy, can I just ask you a quick question? It's Holly.
Sure.
I think, Heidi, you're here now, right?
I am, yes. Thank you so much.
Yes, but you did not get any type of link or confirmation email, is that right?
I didn't, but I signed up at the last minute, so that might be my fault.
Okay, so Judy, I was just wanting to make sure that if you could just confirm that the other two gals got the information they need.
Claire and Jackie, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent it to them. I'm just wondering if they, sometimes people get the time zones wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I'm not sure if I could take a few minutes and email them.
Do you have their email addresses? Because I can email them while you're talking.
I do. I just got to get out of all this then.
Here, let me just keep going. Let me see if I can find them. Hold on. Just go ahead and keep talking.
Okay, alrighty. Okay, so everyone's unmuted. So if you have a dog or baby in the background, please maybe mute yourself. And how you do that is on your list on the right-hand column. Just maybe click the microphone so that you are muted. And if you can't hear, using a headset is much better. Okay, so if you can beg, borrow, or steal a headset, that might be good. Feel free to interrupt me anytime. I tend not to watch the chat part just because I don't know, I like to listen to what people say. So please jump in anytime and just yell out question. Okay, is that all right? Okay. So where do I get my information from? So I get information from Alberta Health Services, the Public Health Agency, Health Canada, and the Canadian Pediatric Society. I also am a parent effectiveness training instructor, so I do bring in a lot of this was the original parenting program 50 years ago that spawned all the other ones, the How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, the Triple P, the Nonviolent Communication. A lot of those programs came from concepts in parent effectiveness training. So I do bring a lot of that into these workshops. So that's where I get my information from. And especially for this one, the author and parent educator named Mary Sheedy Kurchinka is one of the best sources of information on spirited children. And Dr. Sears did a really good book too called Fussy Baby and High Need Child, and he didn't get his spirited child till it was the fourth one out of his 8 kids. So he had a lot to contribute too. So. Okay, so what we're going to do is learn the 8 characteristics of temperament, and we're going to identify what are common behaviors of a spirited temperament. So we're not going to focus so much on the easy temperaments because, quite frankly, they're easy to parent, and most people aren't need information about that one. So, and we're going to explore some helpful parenting strategies, and then I'm going to talk to you about the benefits of a spirited temperament because there are quite a lot of benefits maybe later on down the road. Hi, Holly, how are you doing on those emails?
You know what? I just put a note on our Facebook page for them to email me if they need information. So I think that's the best I can do for now.
Yeah, okay. Alrighty. I am recording my part, so if they want it later, maybe they can have the recording, or we'll see what we can do.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so my goal is that you take home one idea. Well, actually you are at home, so if you'll just try out one idea. So what is temperament? Temperament is really the how much or the intensity of their personality. So everybody's born with a personality, and if you look at Myers-Briggs or personality dimensions or true colors, we all are on different levels of personality, on preferences. And temperament tends to be the how much of those. And the thing is, children are born with a temperament. They come out of the womb some parents can even feel their temperament when they're in utero. So they can feel a really active baby, or sometimes a spirited baby really has a very difficult, the mom has a very difficult pregnancy, but the spirited baby makes it, and they come out and they're that way for the rest of their lives. So it's important for parents to know that they don't cause a temperament. It's nothing you ate in pregnancy. It's nothing you've done. You haven't spoiled the child so they've gotten spirited. It's just the way they are born. And if anything, you just have to accept that you get what you get, right? It is what it is. So in research, the founders of temperament were Thomas, Chess, and Birch, and they began studying it in 1956. And it's grown over the last 30 years, and it's very well entrenched in common psychology, nursing, behavior, books, and research right now. It's funny, I have a son in nursing and a daughter who's taking psychology, and in all their books I look up temperament and it's there. So it's very well researched now. So the continuum is 40% of all babies are born easygoing. 10 to 15% of all babies are born high need, or what we call spirited. Now these kids used to be called other things like the difficult child, the strong-willed child, the difficult baby, and we wanted, or everybody thought it'd be nice to have a nicer word for them because they do have some wonderful qualities, and spirit is a great word. 15% of all babies are slow to warm, and there's quite a few that are not quite easily slotted into any of those categories. So it doesn't add up to 100%. Now these are the temperament traits. Now some people will separate persistence from distractibility, but they're quite similar, so I tend to lump them in one, and a few people, other people do too. So it's their persistence. So a spirited child will be very persistent. They will be high sensitivity. They will be not very adaptable. They will be very intense. They will be not very regular. They will be very active. And their first reaction to things will not be very good. And they tend to be very moody. Okay, so we'll talk about what that looks like. So, for example, babies. Do anybody have fussy babies, like spirited babies? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So you'll probably recognize some of these. Usually they say if a child's, it's on a continuum. So if a child's more on the spirited side, they are going to exhibit about 5 of the 8 characteristics. So for babies, a lot of them want to be held constantly. They don't want to be put down in carriers, in cribs, in exercisers, and swings. They'll only stay in those a couple minutes and then they want to move. It's almost like they're bored. There's a lot of crying. So in babies, the crying curve peaks at 2 months of age, and then it settles down nicely into about 4 or 6 months. But for spirited babies, they cry a lot, and we say for no apparent reason. They're changed, they're fed, they're held, they're slept, and they're still crying. So it's quite hard for parents to handle when they've tried everything they can think of to calm these babies and they're still crying. Colic ends at 4 months. So colic is characterized by 4 hours of crying, at least 4 days a week, for 4 months, and yet spirited babies just keep on crying. They don't like isolation, so that's nighttime or daytime. So they don't like to sleep alone. And they have a hard time accepting substitute care. And this is really difficult because we say, parents, you know, fill up your needs, take some time off for you, remember your self-care, and yet when your child won't accept another caregiver, it can be really, really hard for you. They don't like cribs, car seats, anything that confines them. They're very sensitive to stimuli. So if you take baby out to a day in the mall or something where there's a lot of stimulation, a lot of noise, people, sounds, smells, they will become very oversensitive and they will spend all night crying to kind of release the anxiety they have. They're also poor sleepers and eaters because they don't schedule very well. They're not very regular. So that's babies. So what about toddlers and preschoolers? Do we have anyone with toddlers and preschoolers?
Yes.
Preschoolers?
Toddler.
Okay. Toddler? Okay, so...
Toddler, 15 months.
Yes, yeah, toddlers are ages 1 to 2, and preschoolers are about 3 to 5. So they're very smart. They prefer real items over toys. So if you give them a toy laptop or a toy cell phone, they don't want that. They want yours. They want the real things. Again, they have really unpredictable moods. They wake up cranky from most naps. Even as babies, even as school-age kids, they wake up cranky. And they're not very good sleepers either. They do wake up a lot. Generally, they get to be better sleepers in the school-age years. They go through severe separation anxiety. So in average kids, when you leave them with a caregiver, you say goodbye, they'll cry for about 5 or 10 minutes and then they'll settle down into an activity with a caregiver. So spirited children will cry almost the whole time you're gone. It can be very hard for caregivers, but they only get them for an hour or 2 hours, so it's okay for them. They're very active, and even at a time, toddlerhood is a very active time, but even when they film these children when they sleep, they're all over the place. They're moving when they're sleeping. They're picky eating, and that's, again, a very developmental, normal phase. Most toddlers are picky eaters. And the thing that is really hard is their frustration tolerance is very low. So as the gatekeepers of all the treats, and when we say no, they really have a hard time handling the frustration of no. They need a lot of attention and physical contact, so they love cuddling, being held, being carried, being dressed, a lot of physical attention. And they often have severe resistance to daily routines. A lot of things can be a battle, and that's that persistence characteristic. They can cling in new situations and strangers, so they hold back. If you take them to a song time or circle time, they hold back. They don't want to go happily with new kids, new leaders. They cling to you. They insist on self-direction, decisions, and choices. And this is really interesting because, in a way, you're parenting teens now. and the teen years are going to be a breeze because you're so used to children who already are self-directed and make their own decisions. And you're just along for the ride to keep them safe. But they're very much know what they want, and you're just along for the ride. And they're not distractible, which is really hard because that's the main discipline tool we recommend for this age is distraction. And yet these kids are smart. They know they're persistent. They go back and back and back. They also have pretty violent, intense temper tantrums. So when average children throw a temper tantrum, again, it lasts about 15 to 20 minutes. Not spirited children. They will throw a tantrum that lasts an hour and a half, and it's almost like they're in a zombie state where you can't talk to them. They're just so out of it. And to watch that as a parent is really hard. It takes a lot of energy out of you. And that's why we say, you know, especially through these years, is try and find some self-care for yourself. So, school-age children. Okay, it gets better. Yes, then they start getting structured, right? They start realizing they need their sleep, they need their food on time, and some of them really need routines. So if they impose a structure and it helps them regulate their day. Now, school-age children do often have meltdowns even in school-age years. My daughter was 7, I think, the last time she threw a tantrum. Well, kind of like a toddler, preschooler tantrum. And it lasted a long time. So a lot of school-age spirited kids still do have toddler tantrums. They're very determined, which is really good. When they want something, they want something. And they're picky in their food, their sleep, and their clothing needs. So when we talk about that characteristic of sensitivity, they don't like certain clothes. So seams will bother them, fabrics will bother them. So they really need to have a choice in clothing. They may have about 3 or 4 outfits and that's it. So the rest you may pack away or give away because they will not wear them. They really like physical contact, which is really nice again. And they're starting to develop resilience because they have to manage their coping skills for their emotions and their frustration. So they are getting better. They're very creative, so they have a lot of ideas, thinking outside the box ideas. They stand up to authority, and that's that persistence again. So they have a really good sense of justice and fairness, and they will stand and take a stand on issues and fight to the death sometimes. So you'll notice a lot of spirited school-age children do not have other spirited friends. They tend to play well better with easygoing friends. Now, among siblings too, you'll also notice that 2 spirited siblings will always be bucking heads. Okay, so it can be really challenging to manage up. They do have negative reactions. Again, you know, it's not as violent and tantrum provoking as a toddler years, but say you're going swimming and you promise them, yay, we're going swimming today, and you get to the pool and it's closed and they're still quite grumbling about it. They don't like change in plans. So their first reaction is still pretty negative to things. It takes them a while to warm up to newness and change. Separation anxiety, they still go through that. It was kind of interesting because my daughter started university this year and it took her a while to settle in, and she'd come home on weekends and she'd hang around and she'd just cuddle a bit more and spend some more time watching movies with me. And then I realized, oh yeah, she's spirited. It takes her a while to settle into things. Her first reaction is not always right away. It takes a while. So they will have that all their life. They also are becoming sensitive to others' feelings. So that sensitivity characteristic. They can walk into a room and feel the emotional temperature. They can tell who's upset, who's not. And it's kind of neat because we do need people like that in the world. And it's really neat to have. And then teenagers, it gets even better. So teenagers are really determined. So they don't listen to you, but they don't listen to their peers either. So they're quite persistent in their goals and what they want to achieve and what they want to do. And they have that quality of stick-to-itness. When my daughter was 2 years old, she sat down at a desk with a white piece of paper and a red marker. And she colored every white bit of that piece of paper where normal 2-year-olds just scribble all over it. And I looked at that and I thought, holy cow, how can anyone sit there for an hour and cover every little bit of white paper? And even to this day, she is very determined to finish things that she starts, which is sometimes a very good quality. And again, they're sensitive to self and others' needs. So they're the ones that go out and spearhead causes, and they stand up for the social justice of others that can't stand up for themselves. They're very goal-orientated and self-directed, so they are really good at knowing what they want. And they become really good social skills and communicators because they've had to advocate for their needs all along. They have an ability to solve problems, and they're very perceptive about people and situations. They can read things very easily that a lot of easygoing kids don't even notice. So they do get much better. So far, any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Have you seen that a lot of these spirited children tend to be diagnosed as they get older with ADHD?
There's no research yet that shows a link between that. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not, they can't pinpoint in the brain where temperament comes from. So there's more research coming, but nothing's definitive yet.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Judy,
Okay.
can I just jump in on that one as well?
Sure.
Just in my experience from talking with parents, that question comes up from time to time, but I definitely haven't, I mean, without being, you know, a scientist or a doctor or a researcher, it seems more just a coincidence, right? That, I mean, obviously, if 20% or 15% of babies are spirited, some of them are going to end up having ADHD or ADD or be on the, you know, the autism spectrum. But yeah, like you said, there's no research showing that, right? So I would say parents don't need to worry about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. My first son was diagnosed with ADHD, and he wasn't even diagnosed till he was 15 probably. But yeah. But it's interesting, like that has a few characteristics with spirited children, but it's not correlated. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see what comes out in the next 5-10 years on that. Okay, so when I'm doing this in a workshop, what I do is I give parents a whole list of daily things they have to do with their kids, like get their kids to brush their teeth, change their clothes, wear pajamas, get a coat, things like that. And I ask parents, okay, put what you don't care about in a green basket, what you do care about in a yellow basket, and things that you go to the wall and fight for in the red basket. And it's really interesting to see the results because ideally most would end up in the green basket, right? So, so with spirited children, you really, really have to pick your battles. So they, because of their persistence and their sensitivity, you could be getting into power struggles with them all day long. And that's not very good for building a relationship. So you have to really let go on a lot of things you want to control and hand over that control, age appropriateness, to them, or else you're going to be fighting a lot of the times, right? So make sure you limit your rules to a few ones that you really, really want to uphold. So parents have temperament too. We are all born with a temperament. And what do you think happens when you have a really spirited parent and a spirited 4-year-old?
Disaster.
Yes, it can be really difficult, right? You, like I said, you would probably always get into power struggles over everything. What about a spirited parent and an easygoing child? That might fit better, right? So the parent might be persistent and have issues with first reactions and things like that, but the child is very easygoing, so that might work too. The same way a more spirited child would work with a more easygoing parent. That might help too. So just be aware of where you are in your temperament. If you Google temperament, there are a lot of quizzes on the internet, and there's some geared for adults. For example, I know I'm more on the spirited side because my first reaction to things is always negative. When I come home and my husband's moved the furniture, I just instantly don't like it. No reason why. I do warm up to it, but I just don't like it. And I do have the quality of persistence and sensitivity, but it can be really hard when you have children with those same qualities. So a lot of times when parents are first experiencing their fussy baby or their spirited toddler, they have a lot of doubt, and it's very exhausting, especially watching an 1.5 hour tantrum. And everybody's telling them, you know what, you're just being manipulated. All that child needs is a good spanking to whip them into shape, or just leave that baby to cry it out. They're gonna settle down sometime. So you get a lot of these messages, and if you don't know about temperament, it can be very, very hard on you, because as parents, we take it personally. We think we're doing things to cause it, or if we pick them up and comfort them, we're making them that way, and that is so not true. What you're doing is meeting their needs so that they grow into those wonderful qualities as school age and teenagers. So it's really important to get connected, and so grateful we have resources on the internet that do provide support, like the Fussy Baby site and books out there. And I wish there were more support groups in cities that kind of help parents parent them, because they really are different children. They do have different characteristics. And it can be stressful among partners, decision making on how to handle it. So it's kind of neat if your partner can understand different temperaments too, because they'll, if you're a spirited person and your partner's very easygoing, they may not understand. So any questions? Okay.
I'm glad I'm not the only one feeling all of those things in that list.
Yes. Yes, I did. I certainly felt it. I show the little wine bottles because, sometimes you feel like this empty carboy here because your spirited child takes so much energy, it just sucks you dry. And I swear, when we had our last baby, and during the first 3 years, he took about 90% of my time. I had to plan my day around him. I had to deal with tantrums. I had to cajole him into just getting through the daily routine. And my other 4 children got the other 5% of my time. And poor partner, he got remaining dregs. But, and how do you explain that to siblings, right? So a lot of times my kids would say to me, well, how come he has different rules? Or how come, you're trying to cater to him? And I try to explain to them, well, we give according to need. And right now, he needs this. And when you need that, I will give to you. So it's not, and kids, usually about age 4 or 5, they start to understand that the world's made up of different kinds of people, and different people have different needs. So they're getting a little more understanding. And actually, as they get older, when they got to be school age, I'd explain temperament to them and talk to them about their characteristics and their, why they feel frustrated when something doesn't go right. And it helps them to understand themselves and what they need to advocate for. So a lot of times after support and information, parents do feel a bit more connected to children. And once your kids are grown up and you see what wonderful, lovely people they are, then you kind of feel vindicated like I do. You can say to the relatives, see, they didn't grow up spoiled. So some parenting strategies. Okay, so the thing about spirited children is once you accept that you have this unique child, and I like to tell parents, you know, your child is like a bottle of wine. And everyone knows wine is not the same. You have Chardonnays here, you have Pinot Grigios over there, you have Cabernet Sauvignons, and you have different regions and grapes and blends, and they all have different characteristics. So you have a certain type of child, and get to know your child, accept them, and look for the wonderful qualities they have. So you want to manage them, you don't want to control them. So acceptance is the big part. Okay, so spirited children really need patience. And if you're not an overly patient person, boy, you sure develop it. And they need a lot of flexibility. So when you go to the beach and they're throwing a tantrum because they have wet sand all over their skin and it's driving them crazy, you need the flexibility to maybe go home and wash it off or run to a shower, or even traveling. Traveling with spirited children brings a whole new dimension into travel because you have to be flexible anyways, but then you have to be super flexible. You want to pick your battles. So probably matters of safety, those are things you probably want to battle. Those are hills you do want to die on. But anything else should be open to negotiation. And we know these children are absolute amazing negotiators. Actually, I can't tell you how many spirited children I knew that grew up to be lawyers. And I think they are really good negotiators, even from an early age. You don't want to punish because typical punishments do not work on spirited children. So they're the ones, if you spank, they say, you know, that didn't hurt me. Or you give them a timeout and they're on the other side of the door and they're throwing blocks at the door and trashing their room. And it just isn't going to work. So the more you problem solve and negotiate with these children, the better. And they need a lot of understanding. And they need your protection, especially from other people's criticism, okay? Because they can't help the way they are, but they need you as their advocate. So, calm down tools. Oh, so do you all see the chip picture? Yeah? So, this is my son's fit of anger. When I said no to the chips, he took this big Costco bag of chips up to his room and dumped them all over his floor, and he made sure he ground every one of those chips into the carpet. He was so mad. So, I don't know, I think he was about 4 at the time. So, at that point, I had to stay calm and help him calm down. Okay, so there's lots of ways to help him calm down. Helping him to breathe. I don't know if I have those here. Oh yeah, here's some. So these are all ways to help kids calm down. Now, when they're throwing a temper tantrum and it's lasting an hour and they're in that zombie state, nothing you say or do is going to calm them down. Okay, you just have to wait it out, get them to a safe place. I used to put mine in the car if we were out in public. I put them in the car, put them in the car seat, and just let them kick and scream and whatever they had to do. And I'd stand by them and I'd just sort of rub their head, but I wouldn't say anything because nothing gets through. And then, but now that my violent temper tantrum is 10 years old, he can handle his anger pretty good. Now he goes and he stomps off to his room and he cries. So that's good. You know, it does come, it does get better. It just takes a lot of practice for them. So these are all tools on things to do other than, you know, hit people or whatever little toddlers like to do when they're mad. Okay, so crying is good. Getting a hug is good. a lot of these are for older kids, but blowing into an anger tube. So we used to get just a little paper towel tube, and that we decorate it and say, okay, this is our anger tube, so let's blow into it. And the act of blowing into it helps them breathe, okay, and it restores a little calmness there. They can run, stomp, or jump, shake off their feelings, throw balls, go for a walk. Those are all some kind of ways that kids can burn off their anger. If they're hitting people or they're biting people, we still have to intervene and say, no, we don't hit. Here, let's do this instead. Let's hug. Okay, any questions so far?
No.
Okay. Okay, so for babies, you want to kind of use different kinds of carriers because sometimes they don't want to be put down, so try a carrier. And when they're crying and you feel frustrated because you've tried everything, it's still more important to stay calm than to stop the crying. So if you need a break, put them down in a safe place for a couple minutes and take a breather. Okay, it's okay. It's not systematically letting them cry it out. It's you feeling that you need a break. And I tell you, there were many times I called my husband home at 3 o'clock and I said, I can't handle this anymore. You have to come home. And thank goodness he did most of the times, but sometimes I couldn't. So I just had to put the baby down and go somewhere and cry myself. So if you can call a friend, that would be great too. So find your community. It's helpful to hang out with other parents who have spirited children, and because they understand, they know, you know, if a tantrum starts, it's going to end the play date because it's going to last an hour and a half. They also know that your kids have a low frustration tolerance and that they're not being spoiled. They just can't handle being frustrated. And it gets better with time, but they need time and they need development. So you want to meet your needs as much as you can and try and find childcare that works. It's very hard separation anxiety, but you want to find someone who can handle them really upset when you leave. This one's important. Meet dependency needs on their schedule. So if they want to still have their soother, they still want their bottles, they still want to breastfeed, they still want to sleep with you, maybe that's something they really, really need. So be open to considering it. Tips for toddlers, pick your battles. Redirect over and over, although it's really hard because they're smart. Carry snacks. So there's no research to support this, but this is purely anecdotal, but most parents carry a juice box or a granola bar or something, and if they feel a tantrum is happening, they get some food into their child right away, especially after naps. If they can get a juice into them after naps, it's amazing how much better moods there are, and it can avert a tantrum, and it's just raising their blood sugar. So as much as possible, have regular meals, nap, and toileting time. Get them more regular, more on a schedule. And stay calm during tantrums. So teach emotional intelligence. What that means is when they have a tantrum, they're done the tantrum, give them the words for how they're feeling. So say to them, you were really frustrated. You were really angry back then. How did that feel? So that they start associating emotion words with their feelings. Okay, and eventually they'll pick up that language. Choices are really important. If you're in a power struggle, give them lots and lots and tons of choices. So make sure they're choices you're happy with, like, do you want to walk yourself up to bed or do you want mom to carry you up to bed? Okay, so you can make choices out of anything. It's just being that creative. And sometimes you just have to connect with them on their path and then kind of sway them over to your path. Okay, so you have to kind of go with them for a while and then nudge them onto yours. And I find forcing them to do things doesn't work, because then you end up in power struggles. But if you nudge them, and for example, let's say they won't clean up their toys, okay? So you can stand there and insist and then threaten and then punish, but you're going to get in a huge power struggle. So you want to go gently. So you ask them first, and then you go in and you make it a game, or you go in and then you help them clean up the toys, or you give them a choice built in there. So nudge them, and as much as possible, try and get it done without an all-out war. Okay, I'm going to, one thing here, fit the programs to your child and not your child to the program. Okay, so their first reaction is often negative. If your child's not one to sit down in circle time or song time, maybe that's not the program for them at that time. It's not to say they're never going to be at that point, but for now it's not for them. And there's nothing wrong with your child. It's just the program's not a good fit. Okay, so don't worry about it. Because their first reaction is negative, you want to stay with your child in new situations. And that's the same for kindergarten. If they have a policy that parents can't stay, it's your choice. You can insist on staying, because hopefully teachers know a bit about temperaments, and if they don't, maybe you want to educate them. Typically, you know, they like play dates at your house, so if they want to cling to you, they may be more comfortable having play dates at your house first before going out. Give lots of warnings before transitions, lots of warnings. And if there's something new, you can role play new activities. Take them to a new caregiver's house a couple of times before it actually happens, those kinds of things. Their activity level is high, so provide a lot of outdoor play, that kind of thing. The adaptability, so practice some coping skills and acknowledge their feelings. Like say, I know it's frustrating to have to change caregivers, or it's really tough to, you know, have to go away to university. Never ends. So mood changes, okay, that characteristic. So don't take it personally. It's not about you. Make sure they get food and rest. Help them handle their anger and frustration, and recognize they get a lot better at that when they're about 4, 5, 6, not so much in the toddler, preschooler years. Try and point out the positives to them, because they don't see the positives, they see the negatives, okay? And help them have a calm down place, but not a timeout. Regularity, have regular bedtimes and meal times, keep to routines. Sensitivity, so they're very sensitive to their feelings. As much as possible, adapt the environment to meet their needs. So if you're going to the lake and you know they hate sand on their skin, be sure to bring extra clothes and find ways to meet their needs that way. If it becomes overwhelming to them, leave. And they do get better at coping. It's parents get in this habit of thinking, well, if I don't nip this in the bud now, it's going to just snowball into a bigger problem down the road. And everybody tells you that. The parenting books tell you that, and it's so not true. Kids change. They develop. They go through different stages, and they get better practice. Okay, and the last ones are intensity. So again, allow them their range of emotions and stay calm as much as possible. Teach them good strategies on how to handle their anger. That's going to take a while. When they're being persistent, negotiate. And negotiation is another word for problem solving. So they become expert negotiators. The times you have to stay with your no, make sure it's really a no you're going to go to the wall for. Okay, so, and everybody has to decide what they will absolutely not allow. I think in our house it was hitting. We would not allow hitting. And my last one too, he was a biter. So I couldn't go to play groups for about 1.5 years because he was a biter and I couldn't stop him. But he grew out of it. He's 10 now and he doesn't bite anyone. Choose your battles. Lots of yeses. Lots of yeses. And then when you have to say no, stick to your no. So they're going to have a longer rope. Okay, so for school-age children, you want to keep structure and routines, make sure they get food and sleep. And again, you know, accept their readiness for programs. They may not warm up to outside activities or music lessons or sports right away. Let them pick and choose when they're going to go, and let them choose when they're going to separate from family. A lot of spirited kids don't want to do sleepovers. They want to stay close to parents, and that's okay. And they do like to continue physical affection. So even so, with dads and girls and mums and sons, continue on giving hugs, touches, pats. They need it. Teenagers, so problem solve, everything. You should be well practiced by now because you've been starting since they were toddlers. Your job is to be a mentor and a guide and continue meeting their affection needs. And you know what? Once they're teenagers, they're so easy to parent because they've just been so independent for so long. It's amazing. So any questions on parenting strategies?
Nope.
No? Okay. I don't actually have a clock.
I have a question.
Sure.
My question is about the temper tantrums, and you mentioned how they go into that zombie state. And my son is 15 months old, and I've been starting to notice this more and more, and it often happens when he wakes up in the middle of the night and he's frustrated that he's awake and he can't figure out how to get back to sleep. Is the only thing that we can really do is to kind of stand by and offer a little bit of comfort from time to time? Or is there anything else that we can do, like give them an environment change to kind of snap them out of it?
Mm-hmm. If he's around 15 months, he might, what we usually call those are night terrors. And they're all children tend to have them in those toddler years. And it is a zombie-like state. It's different from nightmares because nightmares, they actually wake up. But in night terrors, they don't really wake up. They're kind of still out of it. Do you think it might be that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I've seen him act in a similar way during the day as well, but it's a little bit different at night, and I just feel like I can't reach him because normally I nurse him back to sleep, and at those times I'm trying to nurse him and it's right there, and it's like he's not even aware that I'm next to him.
Right. Yes.
So maybe it is a night terror.
Yeah, that sounds like it. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like it. So most common wisdom is just to try and get him back to sleep because he doesn't wake up, he's not aware. So, but they do grow out of those. Usually by about 3, 4, they don't have night terrors anymore. Then it's nightmares. And then they do wake up, and then they can talk about it, and you can calm them down that way. But yeah,
Right.
just kind of put them back to bed. Whereas the tantrums during the day, they get worked up into a tantrum that they are out of control, right? It's a gradual working up. Mm-hmm. But either way, it's hard. It's hard to intercede because they don't really know you're there. You just have to keep them safe.
So keep them safe and just be accessible if they need your comfort.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all that you can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
During the day, you know, they will calm down. They will stop eventually. They won't continue that way. But the worst thing to do is to punish that because they don't know. They can't help it. It's just an overwhelming sense of emotions. And they do get better in time of handling those. But for the moment, no, just keep them safe and let them finish.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, any more questions? Okay, anybody have the time?
It's 7:57. Well, it's
I have
7:57 Pacific.
10:57.
Okay. All right, that's great. Sorry, I didn't bring a clock in here. Okay, so I always talk about the two sides of the coin. So for the characteristic of highly sensitive, okay, what's the positive side of that? I hate leaving these workshops sounding so negative. But what's the good part of being highly sensitive? Why do we need highly sensitive people?
They can tune into other people's needs.
Yes, yes, they can tune in. They're very empathetic. They're caring. They're just, oh, so wonderful people. I know when my husband and I have a fight the odd time, my daughter instantly knows, like she notices, and it's not a girl thing. My boys do too, who are spirited. They pick up on other people's body language and feelings, and it's really neat to see. So their challenge is not to take it to heart themselves, and sometimes they do. But they're also very affectionate, they're aware, they're perceptive. So it's wonderful. Okay, what's the flip side of being intense? Trying to get you guys to think positive here.
Determined?
Sorry? Yeah? What did you say?
Determined?
I think she said determined.
Determined?
Determined?
Yes. Yes, they throw themselves into things wholeheartedly. Oftentimes that intensity is, we tend to call them the drama queens, right? Oh, they are just so expressive, and when they roll their eyes, they really roll them. Or they're passionate, and they're really great at drama. Wonderful at drama, right? They're enthusiastic. They're deep thinkers. Again, it's really nice to see. As you can see, my son in that picture in the opening, he's just so expressive. How about highly active? What's the positives to that?
They are great at sports.
Yes, they are busy, busy people. So they don't sleep much when they're babies, but they get a lot done when they're older because they don't sleep much then either. So they get a lot accomplished. Very energetic and fit. The persistence, that characteristic drives parents bananas when they're babies and toddlers and school agers. And what's the flip side of that?
They're going to get it done.
They're going to get it done. Yes, yes. So they're resourceful. You can't say no to them because they will find a way. They're confident in their abilities. They know what they need. They have a really great sense of justice. They reach their goals, and they respectfully question authority. And I think secretly, you can tell spirited kids in high school because they're the ones that kind of stand up to the teacher. And they're the challenge is doing it respectfully on behalf of all the other kids that just, sit there. So it's really good to see that too. Now they will question your authority, but they'll question everyone's authority. Moodiness. What's the flip side of that one? Anybody?
When they're happy, they're the life of the party.
Yes, yes, life of the party. They can identify their feelings, so they start as their moodiness. They have a lot of feelings. They feel a lot of feelings, and if you give them the words, they can identify them. They start coping with their emotions, and they also know when they need food and sleep. So they realize they can't stay out and party all night and still be nice the next day. Oh, by the way, you want to watch your sleepovers with spirited kids because they are just, not too many of those in a row for sure. Their low adaptability. That's a really tough one, so I'll help you out in that one. They tend to not want to travel. because they're not very flexible. They don't like surprises, but they do get better at coping with surprises. And they do well with routines, and they tend to be very loyal just because sometimes they don't like things that are new. So they're loyal to friends, people, companies. Irregular body functions, I'll help you out with that one. They like routine and they fit well in an ordered lifestyle. So if their life is pretty structured, then that is good for them. Negative first reaction, the positive side is they're the devil's advocate, right? So everyone throws out an idea and they're the ones that say, yeah, but this and this and this. So we need those people in meetings. They're the realist, they're very practical, and they tend to be cautious. So they don't jump into things that might get them into trouble. So that's a good thing too. Okay, so here are all those other sides of the coins, and they're really nice to see. It's just really hard to parent them when they're babies and toddlers. It's a little, just because you can't talk very well and they can't understand very well. But once they get older, they do become much more easier to parent. So today's mighty oak tree was yesterday's acorn that stood its ground. So if I could just assure you that it does get better, and in spite of my little spirited guy here who put glow-in-the-dark Play-Doh on all our pictures, they're really fun to parent. So this is about it. So anybody have any other questions?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Any suggestions for sleep strategies?
For how old?
Well, in this case, 15 months. But
Yeah.
it's pretty much been this way all along. Doesn't want to go to bed.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to nap. Doesn't want to go down for bedtime sleep. Doesn't want to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Do you have white noise in the background?
Yes.
And
I think sometimes when it's bedtime and we go in and he hears the white noise, he knows that means it's bedtime and he fights harder.